if very early on, you get such a massive piece of plot armor that just bodies any obstacles in the way of the protagonist, you can't really go much lower than that, right?
Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Lost Plot. I am your co-host, and here back with us today we have our host, Maverick Dixon, here to review another movie for all of you to enjoy. This week we're going to be covering Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. This is a 1984 American action-adventure film, story by George Lucas, who we all know and love, screenplay by Willard Huyck and Gloria Katz. Directed by Steven Spielberg. This obviously is an Indiana Jones film, so we get our beloved Harrison Ford as the main role. Before we get into any of those initial thoughts, though, Maverick, do you want to give us a synopsis or overview of the film itself?
Sure. So Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is actually a prequel to the original Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. It happens in a previous time when Indiana Jones is going after this diamond, and he agrees to basically get the remains of a old ancient leader of I believe it's the Chinese Empire, to bring to a man who basically wants the goods, and in exchange he will get this diamond. In the exchange, the shady deal starts to backfire as the dealer decides he doesn't want to give up the diamond, and it turns out into a shootout where the dancer for the party that they're at ends up more or less being abducted by Indiana Jones, somewhat accidentally maybe, and they fly off in a mad chase to escape from the buyer. In the process, they find out that, they realize after the fact that the buyer, his Goonies were in charge of the flight that they ended up taking, and they jump plane. They literally parachute out of there, and Indiana Jones and the dancer known as Willie Scott and another member of the team who was also helping Indiana Jones escape, Short Round, all fall to the middle of India, where they then meet with these people as they try to get back to civilization and realize that this poor impoverished village is facing a disastrous straits because this ancient relic was stolen from their village. Indiana Jones realizes that this was ancient relic that was stolen, might have magical properties, and decides he wants to take it and bring it to a museum, so he agrees to go and quote-unquote help these people. This takes him to Pankot Palace, where he gets involved in a nefarious scheme involving rituals of sacrifice and the enslavement of children as they try to regain power for this ancient god known as Kali and try to take over the world. And it results with Indiana Jones and the rest of them trying to stop this ritual cult and bring the stones back to the people in the village in India.
Nice.
Yep.
So what is your initial thoughts on the movie? Maybe a couple sentences and rating.
So it's so funny because I'd only seen this film once before, and I recalled it being dark at points, which is why I hadn't seen it that often previously. But then watching it this time around, there was a lot of things in the film that stretched believability in regards to how possible such a thing could occur. So the end result of it, I think, made me laugh more than I recalled, and not necessarily in the best way. So I think that the movie leaves a lot lacking. I think there's a reason that I have not returned to this film until now, and my end result reflects that, as I gave it a 2.2.
I gave it a 2.25.
Wow. That's crazy. Oh my goodness, we got right up there, neck to neck. That's pretty close. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, this movie has like a lot going on, and they kind of jump all over the place. I think the conclusion I came to is this movie is different than other Indiana Jones movies, where in other movies, Indy is kind of driving the plot. He has a specific mission in mind from start to finish. This one, he's kind of like drug along, and he's not quite sure what he's looking for. And he finds the stones, and then he frees the children, and he saves the small Indian village. I think it's just lacking so much of what a story needs. And it ends up just being boiled down to an action adventure story. Like, it is just like the most generic action adventure story ever. You could swap in any action adventure character and you'd probably get the same result. The unfortunate thing is, because it's so dark, this cannot be watched by kids. So it's like,
Yeah.
Your audience is obviously adults, but it just doesn't have the same emotional weight that you would want in an adult film.
Yeah. And as we talked about in the last one, there was some discussion around serial films and what this series originally was derived from. And there was almost a sense in which this one leaned more into the serial film aspect and feel than the previous one did, to its own detriment, in my opinion. So, well, and I'm sure we'll get definitely to why that's the case. But yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah. So, with that out of the way, let's get into the meat of this. What are your thoughts on the opener? Was it attention grabbing? Was it interesting? Did it set up the characters in a way that they had some sort of arc to traverse throughout this story?
Yeah, I mean, of all inciting incidents that cause everything else to go forward in the rest of the film, this one is definitely one that causes everything going forward. Unlike in the first one, where you see that Indiana Jones gets established, he goes on this little heist for this relic, this ancient god statue thing. In this one, it's more, and then he resolves that, and then he goes back to his normal life, and then he reestablishes why he should be on this new adventure. And this one, everything stems from this first encounter, where he has to deal with all of these bad guys in Singapore who want the loot and don't want to pay for it, right? And so from there, everything then progresses to push him into the rest of the film. It's it's serviceable in regards to pushing that forward. It felt very much like Charlie Chaplin Enter the Chat. Just because there was so many slapstick type things that were going on in the middle of this, where, I mean, after the fight starts, you have the classic kicking of the vial, which has the antidote around the room, and the kicking of the diamond around the room, and then the gong falling and rolling, and all of these things that were going on that were just kind of crazy, kind of silly. And you would see that in a situation where you have a bumbling little idiot running around and then slipping and falling and all that kind of stuff. That was the feel you got from the beginning of this film. So it set the tone for the film, which you will get more of that type of stuff going forward. I just don't know that that's necessarily the feel. Did we really want that feel for this film? I didn't get the impression with the other pieces going on in the film that's what we want. Maybe that's a side tangent, but like in regards to an opener for a film, it was serviceable and it got us into the plot.
Yeah. It's okay. I think of all the things in the movie, like you said, it's not the biggest problem. It doesn't gain any points from me, really. It's kind of like middle of the road in terms of opening sequences, because it gets the job done of grabbing your attention, right? There's a big shootout. You are introduced to the characters of Willie and the characters of
Short Round.
Short Round.
Indiana Jones.
Yeah, and then you get like this random one-off Asian dude who apparently we're supposed to feel bad for when he gets shot, but we've never seen him before and we never see him again. So, it was like, it almost felt like if you were gonna make like a Saturday morning action cartoon panel in the newspaper, this would have been it. Like, it is just the most basic. Oh, we're gonna do a trade and they're gonna backstab us and we're gonna have a shootout and then we're gonna escape. That was it. So yeah.
Well, and it's almost, and we talked about this a little bit in the last one, but you see it more clearly in this one, where the beats are different in these films compared to other films, right? Where you might have the 3-act structure, where you have, developing the character, getting them involved in the plot, all of that good stuff, and then you have all of this development in the middle, and then coming to the climactic ending arc with that final act, right? And you have these 3 different beats that are pretty common in previous historical films. Once again, coming from different film structures or story structures, such as The Hero with a Thousand Faces. This doesn't exactly do that, just because it's more so it's scene based, and you might have some element of a 3-act structure intertwined, but more so you get the idea of, oh, they escaped from Singapore, but then they got onto the plane, and the plane is owned by the bad guy they just escaped from. What's going to happen next? And that's where you cue the serial ending where they go, tune in next week, right? And then in the next week, you see that they're on the plane and the plane runs out of fuel and they jump out of the plane on the raft. And you're like, what's going to happen next? Tune in next week, right? That was kind of the beats that you got with this film. And so I think that that's part of why you see the driving aspect of it is you don't necessarily see as much of an overarching tension in the film as much as you see individual quote unquote tension filled scenes throughout this movie. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I got you. I don't really have anything else on this, unless I assume those were your closing thoughts on the opener.
No, yeah, I mean, from there you get to the raft, which is just, a trip in and of itself.
True. So that said, moving to the raft, entering the fray, the tensions increasing. Were the tensions increased, Maverick? Were you gripping the edge of your seat?
Yeah, from laughing so much.
Yeah, you want to tell the audience about the inflatable raft scene?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever been in a raft before, or any sort of inflatable buoyant device that can carry you. But if you have, and you have ever had a chance of, say, hitting it against a sharp rock, and then, the air starts to come out, you realize these things generally aren't that stable. So, I mean, if you want a wild ride of wild rides, you just find this scene on YouTube, look it up and watch it for 5 minutes and have an absolute experience, because I'm telling you, this was probably one of the craziest things I think I've seen in cinema in regards to just the absolute power of a raft that should not exist. I mean, they fall from the sky like this thing's a parachute, proceed to then use it to fly down a mountain was there an avalanche coming after them? I forget. But like they go down a mountain, avoiding obstacles, fly off the mountain, and once again float down a ravine and land smack dab in the middle of a river, and then just float down the river as if it was all just natural. That could just happen from falling thousands of feet from the air. So, I mean, entertaining beyond a shadow of a doubt. I honestly might even watch that scene again. It's very funny, but the fact that anyone could live through that is stretching the bounds of believability, to say the least.
Yeah, no, that raft is stronger than the Hulk, bro. That thing didn't take a scratch. The crazy part is, like, you'd expect it to maybe even get dirty going through the dirt, but no, it's like spotless by the end. I call that a non-stick pan. Like, holy crap. So anyway,
should have had those on the Titanic. Everyone would have lived. Just to play a couple of those bad boys up and you'd be set.
You just like tie them together like sardines. It would never sink.
Yeah, exactly. And for all you know, it would spawn a motorboat on the back.
True. Or no, it wouldn't spawn a motorboat. It would just move in the direction it needed to go.
It would literally just like float through the air like a magic carpet and you land in New York.
True. Yeah. It also slows. It's a parachute too.
Yeah.
Take it skydiving with you, bruh.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right. So tensions increasing. I want to address this now because I think it's going to lead into the rest of the items regarding the different characters and themes. Did you feel like overall the film did a good job of increasing tensions?
No.
Okay.
I mean, frankly, yeah, the whole film has these, which is, it's interesting because it also has this dark element to it, right? And so, jumping a little bit ahead, they get to Pankot Palace, which is really where the film, quote unquote, picks up. And this is where you see, they're surrounded by probably bad people who are around these ancient stones and trying to use them for nefarious ends, right? Why would they steal these stones unless they're going to do something bad with them? Which, as a side tangent, I don't actually know what the stones were doing for the bad guys, because it seemed like all of the power came from Molly Khan, who is the bad guy, who is the main baddie. Anyways, the guy who did all the ritual, whatever stuff, he's Mola Ram. That's who it is. So, anyways, before we get too far off topic on there, the whole idea of increasing tensions is that you see that they're getting thrown from a bad situation to a worse situation, which on paper, maybe that's what's going on. I think once you get to Pankot Palace, you could say they're pretty much, like we said at the beginning, being forced into worse and worse scenarios, right? He's in his bedroom, he gets attacked, and then he finds a secret door, right? And he goes through the secret door. Okay, that naturally flows somewhat. They get trapped inside of a room inside the secret door, and it's about to crush them. Also bad. They escape from there, but they can't go backwards. Now they have to go forwards. They go into the ritual chamber. They see the ritual sacrifice. It's supposedly getting worse. I think the problem is the slapstick humor really breaks it up. And this is something we've talked about in other films, such as, for example, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and other films like that, where there's so much humor going on and so much almost weirdness in this one. Not even humor, just like, how is this possible, in regards to how is this person this strong? How could Indiana Jones kick someone across the room who's clearly twice as big as him? Things like that. It's you just wonder how this would even be possible for a human being to do. And so these types of things can break up the effectiveness of a film, as you no longer are thinking about, okay, what's going to happen next to our protagonist? How are they going to survive? How are they going to make it through? Oh, well, you're not really thinking that, because you're thinking, wow, that's funny. Oh, wow, that's weird. Or that's hilarious. And as a byproduct, I think a lot of the tension you might build in these scenarios is broken. So I'm willing to hear pushback on that. I could see an argument for the other side, but I just don't personally think it's gripping.
I'm still not entirely sure how to articulate my own ideas here, because I did not feel like tensions were increased at all. Like the entire film, I did not feel like there was a threat. I didn't feel like anyone was gonna die. Maybe the jumping out of the airplane just set the bar as to, like, no damage can be done to these characters.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I actually think that that's significant, because what you're doing is that's a very early scene in the film, right? And so if very early on, you get such a massive piece of plot armor that just bodies any obstacles in the way of the protagonist, you can't really go much lower than that, right? Like the disaster that should occur from jumping out of a plane without a parachute should be drastic. Someone should at the very least get very hurt, and you get nothing of the sort. And if that's the tone you want to set for a film from the start, you are setting the expectation that the protagonist will, without a shadow of a doubt, survive this. And I think that's probably the bigger problem. So sure, you have these dark elements around the rest of the film with, human sacrifice, with child slavery, with these dark ideas. But then when it's preceded by a scene with such drastic protection, you're not going to have the audience sitting there going like, oh no, is Indiana Jones going to make it out of this? Because you pretty much think he will. And I don't think that the way that they portray it in this film makes you doubt otherwise.
Yeah. No, that it kind of felt, remember how we were talking in the last film, how it kind of goes like a wave in terms of tensions?
Mm-hmm.
This kind of felt similar, where it was like they would have something, but it would like immediately get resolved. And so you have like the baseline, which is where a movie would start in terms of tensions, and you just kind of go like up, and then you're back to the baseline, and then you're up, and you're back to the baseline. I think
kind of
also the fact that because Indiana Jones has no set goal in the film, it's harder for us as the audience to feel the tensions increase because his goal is never at risk. And that's just because we never know what his goal is to begin with. Like,
yes, you kind of know what his goal is, and that's more or less to get these stones to put them in a museum, right? That's what at least he states, but he says it like once, and then he says, and we'll get to what he says at the end, but you know, it's like if this is really a strong motivating factor for him, you would see maybe something otherwise. Versus, let's just compare it to the last one, right? In the last one, you have this whole idea that he's still a man of fortune, right? He's trying to gain the treasure and bring it back to the museum and get his glory and his gold and everything that comes with that. But that's also surrounded by these personal motives around, for example, Belloc, who is taking these things from him, and he has a somewhat of a personal vendetta against Belloc as they try to both vie for some level of archaeological supremacy over the other one as they search for these lost relics. And in this one, you don't really get any sense of that. You just get the sense of, oh, I'm here to gain golden glory because that's what I'm here to do and that's what I want, which isn't necessarily a bad incentive on its face. But if you don't have development like we had in the last one with Belloc, it's a lot harder to believe, especially because you don't really bring it up after the beginning of the film when he realizes these stones that the Indian village had might actually be a powerful relic that he's looking for.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I don't think tensions increase very much, if at all, in this film. And if they do, it's like straight back down. That said, though, in terms of tensions and progressing the plot, let's talk about the characters. What were your thoughts on Indiana Jones?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of got to some of that just now, but the whole idea with Indiana Jones is that he wants golden glory, right? He wants to get the treasure and he wants to obtain the relic and he wants to sell it to a museum and be the archaeologist who found it, right? He wants to be the man. Mm-hmm. And when he realizes that this might be a sacred stone, he goes, okay, let's try to get it. And he goes to get it. Okay. Then you get the rest of the film, and the rest of the film just kind of goes from there. So his motivations, I think, is a fair point to look at, because going back to the tension, if you don't have a reason why we want you to live, we're not going to be concerned if you die either, right? Even if that plot armor didn't exist, right? If he was actually in dire straits, why do we care? We don't know why he cares, so why should we care? And that's pretty much what you get with this film, is that you don't really know what he's doing, except he's just on this adventure and we're along for the ride too. So la-di-da. And that leads to problems in regards to how compelling it is, and then also leads to problems in regards to character development. Does this character develop? Does he grow in this film? And I think it's hard to make the case that he does.
Yeah.
You can make the argument that he does, because you see at the end he gives the stone back to the Indian village, and Willie Scott makes some sort of trite comment about, oh, I thought you wanted to sell that to a museum. And then he says something along the lines of, they need it more than I do, or like it's critical to them. It has some value to the survival of their village, and so it's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And he just all of a sudden turns into this white knight that's going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And then you go, okay, so he developed as a character in this film. You know, if you want to check a box, sure, potentially you can make the argument that they checked that box, but was it believable in any sense? No, because once again, there was no development at the beginning, and so there's no development at the end. He says one line at the beginning for his motivations, and then says one line at the end for his motivations, and that's the total change you get in the entire film. And if that's all you get out of an hour and a half or 2 hours of watching this film, you're not really going to have anything to take away from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's talk side characters real quick before we move on to the antagonist. Willie Scott and Short Round.
What are your thoughts on Willie Scott?
I am a damsel in distress who's along for the ride. She, like Indiana Jones, is pulled down this road of misery. And, like, she's literally just there because it's an Indiana Jones film. You have to have a woman that's around that's semi-attractive. So, personally not my type, but conventionally she's attractive, so they put her in. And what did she do other than act as eye candy? I don't really know.
She screamed a lot.
Yeah, it's actually quite obnoxious, to be honest. Short Round, on the other hand, best part of the movie, easily. I would die on that hill.
Yeah, but it's kind of a mound.
True. I think at least with Short Round, you have motivation. He admires Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is like a father figure for him. And you get that a little bit in this dialogue where he talks about where he found Short Round and the fact that his parents are dead. And like Short Round is kind of looking for approval in the eyes of Indiana Jones. And they have almost like this friendly banter. But he has like these little quirks, right? Every time Willie Scott calls him Indiana Jones, he goes, "You call him Dr. Jones, doll." And it's just like he has these very specific ways he believes you ought to behave around Indiana Jones. And when Indiana Jones freaks out, like there's like in Short Round's eyes, he risks losing this parental figure, this friend that he's created. So I don't think it's anything crazy, but I think he is the one character that actually has some semblance of like motivations and fears and like has something to lose within this film. Because his mission is just follow Indiana Jones around. So
yeah,
and
he's
freaking hilarious. So
yeah, and I think that's the one thing is that he is in many ways meant to be the piece of comedic relief for the rest of the film, right? And so you're watching this character and he has ancillary motivations for being there, and they're actually the most compelling part of the entire film. So it's ironic that of all things, it's the side character, and it's not even like he's necessarily invested in the plot itself as much as he is invested in the person who is the protagonist of the plot. So it's he's definitely the best part, and it's incredible that he's as an actor. I think he does a great job. I don't know that I think that that Short Round is a reason to watch the film.
No,
just because it's like he's there and he's I feel like he's stereotyped. I'm not going to die on that hill, but like he's kind of just there doing his thing, and he has reasons for being there. But then other than that, it's just the film progresses and he says his lines, and I don't know. I don't know where exactly I would go with it other than for a child actor, he did great. And he's clearly a good actor now. I mean, he's in all sorts of things. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ke Kwan, but he's also known for other films that he has come out in more modern times, such as Everything Everywhere All at Once. He's the Snake in Zootopia 2. He's the Doctor in The Electric State. He's OB in the Loki TV show. Like, he's been in a lot of things and actually done a phenomenal role in those current roles as an adult. And so this was kind of his entrance into the limelight, if you will, starting as a child in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So I'm glad that it set off his career path, because he's definitely done a lot in the film sphere, and he does well in what he does. But I think, I'm not crapping on him at all in this film, other than to say that he did well, especially for a child actor. I don't think it really makes this film that much better, but it makes it at least more enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, from my understanding, he was a very popular child actor too.
He also played in the Goonies.
Yeah, he gets his start, but like he kind of made the name for himself as like a humorous child actor who was pretty good at what he did. So yeah, anyways, moving on from side characters, let's talk about the villains. Were they intimidating? Were they scary? Did they stop Indiana Jones from achieving his goals, whatever they may have been?
This was another one where it was unfortunate just because the ideas and darkness surrounding the villain looked good on paper, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we sort of already addressed this with the idea of more or less fat lot of good that a dark villain is going to do for you if you already know the protagonist is going to make it out of this, right? And you set the tone for that from the start of the film that he's going to make it out of this. So I think that they weren't bad in idea, the idea that there's ritual sacrifice going on, that people are under the spell of this occult, and the idea that they are using children as labor to achieve their own ends, trying to find these relics in the middle of this like in the middle of these caves, right? So the ideas were good, but everyone just felt like the stock stereotypical mustachioed villain, right? You know, they're like, ha ha ha, I'm here to take over the world, which is what the cult leader more or less indicates. And all of the other bad guys are literal grunts, right? Which I'm not sure if that was supposed to indicate that they were all under the spell as well. And, you know, that's fine, I guess. But if you plot armor combined with stormtrooper-like effectiveness means that there's just not gonna be any level of concern coming from me as a viewer when I see this going on, because you just know they're not gonna stop the protagonist. The protagonist is gonna make it out of there. We're not gonna get them all, like, no one's gonna get killed who's relevant to the plot, and the bad guy's going to be stopped at the end, right? If you have no doubt that all of those things are going to happen in this film, and it's just by the nature of the expectations they set and the types of villains that we're dealing with here. So, and I don't know of another film. I'm sure there are other films out there that deal with some of these darker themes and probably do it much more effectively. But I think that would be a good comparison at this point, but I can't think of one right off the top of my head.
Yeah. No, I thought the villains were like literally just a blank template that said villain, and that was it. There was nothing unique about them.
Insert random name here.
Yeah, exactly. So we've talked about tensions. Like, I think you can see the reason I bring up the tensions first, right? Because it's like, do you achieve your goals? Do we know what the goals are? And everything plays into that. I feel like we've covered transformation a decent amount. How do you feel about themes within this film? Do you think there are any themes in this film?
I think they're trying to drive toward one of like selflessness, right? Giving up for yourself for the sake of those in need around you. And you get some semblance of that, right? Giving back the stone at the end of the film, the idea of freeing all the children, right? Which is like obviously the right thing to do. But, you know, if you're trying to escape these baddies, why not just run away and live out your life without worrying about what they do? But, you know, you have a couple of things like that indicate, okay, maybe there's this idea they're trying to go for of sacrificing for the greater good. And it's a very generic, that on itself, in its face, is a very generic theme to go for, which that doesn't necessarily make it bad. But when everything else is stock in the film, what you're going to get out of it is also stock. So beating a horse to death here, I think that's what they were going for. I acknowledge that it's there. I don't think it's very effective.
Yeah. So I literally have nothing to add on the themes because I came up with nothing. So let's talk about the closure, the impact. How do we think this film? How do you feel about it?
I mean, I would not be surprised if I never watch this film again.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like it is interesting to me that there was controversy around this film when it first came out, right? Just because of how violent and dark it was at the time. It did result in the changing of the rating system for, what was PG versus PG-13 versus R. But I mean, other than that, I mean, it made a ton of money. It made over 12 times what it cost to make. So it was phenomenal. Maybe that speaks more to how much people enjoyed the first Indiana Jones film and they were looking forward to another one, right? Than necessarily the success of this film. It was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, both of which had nothing to do with the plot, I must say. I mean, the original score and best visual effects are, Academy Awards are Academy Awards. You're going to take them. They're great. But in regards to this podcast and looking at what makes a story great, it wasn't hitting any of the marks in any of the critics' eyes when it came out then. And I think that there's a reason for that, just because the plot was not necessarily the focus here. It was definitely a run-of-the-mill plot. And that's what you got, and that's what we're getting here, right?
Yeah, I think, honestly, AI could write a better plot than this. Sorry, George Lucas. This was a bad sign.
Big L. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do better. We know that because you made Star Wars prior to this. So, closing thoughts. I have mine.
You can skip this one, honestly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it literally does nothing for the story of Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a prequel. It's not even like none of the other characters other than Indiana Jones show up again. I mean, the next one, I don't think any of them. I haven't seen the last 2, to be fair, when Indiana Jones is way older. So I'll get my thoughts on those, and maybe those characters do show up, right? You can enlighten me on that when we get there. But in regards to what this adds to even the Indiana Jones franchise on its own, you don't even have to watch this one, and you still have a fairly cohesive understanding of what's going on in all of the other ones. It's just different bad guys compared to what we see in the other films, right? The other ones, you had at least the first 3. The first 2 deal with the Nazis and the treasures that they were searching for. It deals with characters. I know Marion Ravenwood shows up again in one of the later films, so those ones have some level of continuity that you might need to see previous films to get the full gist of what's going on when you watch those. You don't get that with this one, right? This one is on its own. It literally happens before the first Indiana Jones film, so you don't even get anything tied to Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark in this one either. Other than Indy's there, so great, Yeah, so you can avoid it. You can completely ignore this one, and you're not missing anything. Just watch the raft scene on YouTube, and you're good.
Yeah, nice. Exactly. Yeah, I think this movie lacks any... I literally gave Indiana Jones 0 points for being a compelling protagonist. I thought he did absolutely nothing other than just be an action hero. Which is why I said earlier, you could have copied and pasted any action hero into this film, and it would cease to be an Indiana Jones film. It is an Indiana Jones film in name only. It lacks the villain being compelling. It's just non-existent. It's just villain that does scary voodoo magic. Plot is messy and completely reactive. Indiana Jones is literally just along for the ride. There's no emotional devastation whatsoever, and now we don't even need to get into devastation. There's just not any emotional loss in this film. The characters, all of them, are super basic. They're literally just surface level, if that, and there's no if there are themes, they're not really developed. So it's not hitting any of the marks of a good story. It is just I think, this is actually kind of crazy, but I think in terms of plot, I think it has even less there than John Wick does, which is crazy to think about. Like, at least
Yeah.
John Wick has some sort of motivation, despite all of the problems we had with it. It has some sort of baseline motivation and driving force for the main protagonist.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is that, frankly, Indiana Jones is a more stoic protagonist compared to a lot of other protagonists that you'll see. And so the emotion he displays is not that significant generally, which is why it's effective to have other characters to help play off of that and relate to that. And you know, we talked about this in the last one. You know, Belloc was in some ways a voice for the thoughts that were going on in Indiana Jones' mind. And then you do have that emotional devastation when Marion gets captured and he thinks she dies and he starts to drink himself into a stupor, right? You have all of these different things that help to, even though he is a stoic character, you see the gravity and the weight of what's going on in the middle of the film. And this one, the most emotional experience you get from him in general is him freaking out because he's about to get crushed by a rock. And then him going like, what on earth? She won't sleep with me.
yeah.
And that's it. Like, it's you really have nothing going for him in regards to making him an emotionally compelling character. So it's tough.
Yeah. It's truly unfortunate. If only we had Short Round and a better Indiana Jones movie. So that's the pod.
Nice.
I feel like this was so uneventful. We had almost identical ratings. We had pretty similar thoughts as far as all of the stuff, like all the points we hit.
I mean, I can fight with you if you want, but it would just be for the sake of fighting.
Shut up, you dumb. Yeah. This is a pretty bad one. And you know, it's crazy because I think historically people consider 4 and 5 to be the worst. I've never seen 5. I have seen 4. I think 4 is probably better than this one, which is, for how much hate it gets, I think it at least has it hits some of the points, whereas this one does not.
Man, that's crazy.
I think it also could just be that this one came out in an era where this type of film just did really well. And so the fourth one comes out much later. And at that point, it's almost like it was a different era. And so it just doesn't get away with as much.
I mean, if you look at the films that were coming out at that time, you had the original Dune film. Oh. You had a 1984 adaptation. You had 2010, which I don't even know what that's about, but clearly it was phenomenal for the time. You had the Ewok movie from Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure, which I've never even seen that before, but clearly that was popular. You know, like, these are the movies that were coming out at the time, so it didn't really have a ton of competition, maybe.
Yeah.
In the theaters. Probably Dune was the biggest competition at the time, and we all know how that film ended up. Yeah, thank goodness for the remakes.
That's how. Oh, yes, you best believe thank goodness for those remakes, because they're awesome.
Yeah. Denny did a good thing.
Yeah. What?
Don't worry about it.
All right. Moving on. We hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you back next week, where we cover the third installment in the Indiana Jones series. Hopefully, it should have been the last, but more on that next time.